actually the best way to lead is to be authentic to who you are.
Welcome to Leadership In, where we go beyond job titles to explore what leadership really looks like on the ground and from people shaping the future of advertising, media, and tech. I'm Greg McDonald.
And I'm Geoff Wallenitz. We talk with senior leaders about the moments that tested them, the decisions that defined them, and what it really means to lead in an industry that never stands still. Today, we're speaking with Priti Ohri, CEO at Advertible. Priti is known for her long career in ad tech, leadership position in the native space, and strong role advocating for diversity in media and tech. She's been at the forefront of how programmatic, native, and performance-driven advertising have evolved and how leaders can scale technology while keeping creativity and connection at the center. Let's get started. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
So exciting. So the first question we always ask when we sit down here is, if you were at a dinner party and you had to describe what you do, how do you do it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm generally not at dinner parties with people in programmatic. So let's explain it like I'm telling my mom. I'm Priti. I run a company called Advertible. We're in the advertising technology space. And we basically make digital ads that look like they fit whatever environment they're in. They look like they belong, they should be there, and they create a better experience for you so you don't get annoyed with ads.
Then the notion that it looks like it belongs where it is what we would call native,
Correct.
Right, in this industry. Yeah.
Nice. And how did you get into that? Who opened the door for you first?
I've been in media and advertising for about 20 years, so a very long time. My first role was at MTV in Viacom. I started in the accounting department there. I handed out petty cash. There was a safe. I was in an office that had a window. I had office hours where you can come and get $30,000 in wads of cash.
Oh my God. That's wild. It's a different world.
The Pimp My Ride cars would pull up next to our office, wave to me before they came in to get money. So yeah, it was fun. But all joking aside, that opened my eyes to the fact that ad sales was really the heart of where all of these media companies made their money. And at 23 years old, you're like, I want to go do what's driving impact for this company. And so I ended up in ad sales and then followed that path through the brand side, through into digital, and then eventually into programmatic. And so the big turning point or the big career milestone for me was probably working at DataZoo, where it was prime time, 2014 to 2019-ish, where it was really turning from this idea into something that was creating change and developing efficiencies in this space that was fundamentally known for waste. Getting that role at DataZoo and recognizing that there were so many different ways to create impact within an organization that was still finding its way was really exciting. I think one leader there that really made an influence for me was one of my managers or one of our vice presidents of marketing. I worked under him. And when I first started, my role was called product marketing, but I sat in the sales office. And so my natural inclination was, how do I help the sales team sell more stuff? And so when we got our first 8-figure customer, they realized, there was a gap in our organization. And so they did a little bit of a reorg and realized that we really need this function that's helping sales teams tell the story of what our technology does and why it does it better. We called it customer solutions. And my new boss at that time basically said, I don't really know what you do. I just know you do it well. You should be promoted. And I'm just going to clear all the obstacles out of your way. And so that one manager enabled me to take on different roles within that organization so that I could start to understand how all of the different pieces really fit together and how all of the different functions within a company needed to work together in order to create success all around.
That's very rare in a couple of different ways, right? One is that the organization itself is set up in such a way that you can have your hands in a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
That by itself is not uncommon, but still is not super common. And then separate from that, to have somebody who will, as a leader, step back and say, I recognize the talent of this person. Let me give them a wide berth to operate.
Yeah.
Putting those two things together is really rare. That probably gave you pretty big insight across.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that allowed me really to work with the sales team, understand the challenges they were having, bring that back in-house to the product team, and then work side by side with them as our products evolved, understanding how our industry was receiving our messages to then start to build out what our narrative was around. At that time, it was identity and graphs and things like that. So having the opportunity to learn that from the ground up and then influence again through a sales lens, building out an inside sales team, I taught those young folks how to sell through a product marketing lens, which is also uncommon. It wasn't just like we need a 30-second pitch on what our company does. Our whole thing was, what is the value we're leading with? And you get that from listening to the questions that the customers are asking and being able to really answer them from a place of understanding and education.
So when you think about those early days in your career, is there a piece of advice that's either super right or really wrong that kind of sticks out in your head as something that you've carried with you through your career?
Yeah, I think because of the size of that organization, we were maybe 250 to 350 people. So it wasn't a huge organization and it wasn't a small startup. So there was opportunity to move around, and there was also opportunity to kind of become an expert in a single thing. So you could choose which path you really wanted to take. And I remember a CEO at that time gave me a piece of advice when we were walking together to a meeting. And he said, Priti, you're either a builder or a follower. Figure out which one you are and go do that, and you're going to be super successful. And that has stuck with me because in moments where I feel like there's friction or misalignment, it always comes back to that like understanding of myself and recognizing I'm actually a builder. So why am I getting trapped into this role where somebody just wants me to follow?
I love that.
Yeah. Did you have moments along the way where you felt like you didn't belong in the room?
Absolutely. I think growing up as an immigrant, first of all, our natural inclination when our parents worked really hard to get to America. And they worked really hard to then get us into college and to get the education that is supposedly going to get us into the right jobs that would help us to make money, which is what they came here for, the opportunity. And so with that, there was always this understanding of like, well, don't fuck up what I like worked so hard to get for you. And so that's always sitting in the back of your mind of, okay, I just need to like go along with it. I need to listen, follow what someone's telling me what to do, and do the right thing for the company. And I think those were the moments where I thought I had to stay quiet or I had to stay timid or I had to shrink in some way. And that was my initial inclination when I felt like I didn't belong in the room. And then at some point I started to realize, actually, I do bring a unique perspective. I bring a great depth of experience or an understanding that no one else has. Every single one of us is super unique in our understanding and what we bring to the table. And once you recognize that and you can embody that and embrace it, your voice changes. And I think owning that really became a thing for me that I hope I can leave behind for others as well, which is your voice is unique to you and it comes with your experience. And it's as important as the next person's, if not more.
That is so insightful. And the idea that, so I think you take that perspective, right? This, my voice is unique. Everybody's voice is unique. I have this depth of experience. I can do all these things. And this passion for building, not following. You put those two things together. You decide, okay, it's time. I've left Emoto. It's time to start Advertible. So talk a little bit about Advertible and the ways that you guys lead in the native space.
Yeah. So the way that we think about our company is, number one, we want it to be very simple and easy, right? So there's a lot of complexity. We want to create simplicity amongst the complexity. That's one thing. The other thing we really, really focus on daily is how do we ensure that we're bringing the best product to our customers? So regardless of shortcuts, regardless of the quickest path to money, regardless of all of the ways in which your path can take a turn, staying focused on delivering with integrity and honesty and building products by listening to our customers. So once our customer comes to us, once they trust us, then there's a natural conversation that happens, which is, hey, we're also trying to solve this problem. Can you guys assist in that? And making sure that they understand that we're an agile group of people who want to help you. And that trust really enables and opens doors that are about us creating with them and co-collaborating with our customers in order to provide the tools that are most important for them. You came from a large organization. You're aware of how many people it takes to get something done in those places. And we want our customers to look like heroes. So when our product lead doesn't have a ton of engineering resources, my question is always, how can we offload some of that and help you look like a hero? What else can we do for you? What are you missing? And what's going to make your job easier as you navigate internally? Can I write a business case for you? Can I help you identify what your return is going to look like? Can we offer you engineering support? What else can we do? So I think the idea that we lead with integrity, trust, authenticity, and honesty for our customers to help them feel flexible and feel like they can rise in their roles is really important to us, because I know how hard it is internally to make sure people hear your voice and they get your opinion and they actually are doing things that are going to make a difference. And especially when you're publicly traded, the focus is on where's the money coming from. And so really helping to make sure we're aligned with our customers helps to move things forward. But we try really hard to stay focused on our path, and we try really hard to stay focused and do things with integrity.
It sort of reminds me of the quote about take care of your people who take care of the customers, and then obviously stay customer obsessed, however you want to frame that. Can you talk just a little bit more about Advertible and the ways in which your product is differentiating and leading?
Yeah, absolutely. What we do is we basically provide what we call native as a service. When programmatic started, it was like there was display, and then there was mobile, and then there was this year of emerging formats. It was like 2016, and it was native, digital out of home, and audio all at once. And then all of a sudden there was CTV. So those emerging formats kind of got skipped. And a lot of companies didn't invest in actually building out the infrastructure to support those. And so you have these few key players that focus on any one of those formats, or a few of them, but very few of the big players have heavily invested in ensuring a truly omnichannel experience. That said, native in and of itself is complicated. The format requires expertise from the front end, the back end, from design, from a number of different teams actually working together and rowing in the same direction to ensure that it delivers an ad that looks and feels like the publisher's page, that can fit any size space, that can use any number of assets. And so you have this exponential problem of variables upon variables that are being used to deliver a single format. It's almost easier for a company to not invest and not build. And so that's what most of them did. Knowing that, and having had the experience of building out native, we decided that the best thing for us to do would be able to enable large players to plug in a technology and turn it on immediately. And so we have an extensible solution that can plug into any platform, any SSP, exchange, large-scale publisher, and ultimately deliver and render sizeless native advertising using any number of assets on any screen, on any surface, that is actually super cool and matches the look and feel of every publisher that it lands on. And so we have actually delivered on the promise of native for digital advertising and programmatic.
So taking it through that lens, right? You're not just the leader in this space. You're the primary player in this space, if not the only one, right?
Yeah.
And so from your perspective, as a standard setter in this, talk a little bit about the responsibility you feel leading in this space.
Yeah. And I think responsibility is the word, right? Like when you take center stage and be in a spotlight, it is incredibly vulnerable, but that comes with a responsibility that you are setting the stage. And I think in terms of native, we're resetting the stage in a way, because there's an understanding that like, oh, this exists and X, Y, and Z player does this already. So there's a ton of re-education that has to happen. But ultimately, the industry is small and we need to make sure that rising tides lift all boats. So continuing to lead with integrity and continuing to show that we can actually up-level the expectation of what this particular product can do, what this format can do, and using current day technologies and current day trends to actually amplify that and turn it into something that's even greater is possible. So it's this constant battle or this constant harmonizing of helping them to understand that native in and of itself in its current format isn't fantastic. So there's an opportunity to just enter and create a set foundation that makes it better. But at the same time, using AI and using all of the different technologies we have at our fingertips to make it better and to expand into something that we probably never even imagined before. So giving belief and reimagining what's possible through that lens as well.
What I love most about this is that you are both acting and behaving responsibly in your space, leading with integrity, leading with honesty, and creating revenue opportunities for people and creating accretive revenue, right? Those things are not mutually exclusive.
Yes.
That's what I love most about that response.
What an opportunity too, because there are a number of players who started and carried the native banner, if you will, the small b native banner in the early days, but a lot of them have pivoted towards being omni-channel businesses themselves, so they stopped talking about it in the way that they once did. So that must have really opened up some space for you Advertible as well.
Yeah, and I think like you think about native and native as a singular format, but the fundamentals of native can be applied to any format. And what you'll see is as retail media, CTV, there's a through line between the challenges, which is that sizing challenge and the variability challenge, right? As retail media expands and there's the retail media angle and there's the offsite angle. And onsite is a puzzle of I am a brand and I want to advertise across these retailers. They all have different sizes on their current sites. I have a time-sensitive offer, and I need to somehow adjust my message across these retailers while also adjusting my sizing. And then on the other side, you have television, you have CTV, tiles, pause ads. Again, another puzzle of sizes and assets. And how do you make them actually fit at scale across this network? And so I think it's really interesting because being able to like help shape and change and take the fundamentals of this singular format that everyone thinks it's not that important. It's actually not about native at all. It's about reimagining how you think about advertising and rendering and doing things at scale, using assets, using variables, using pieces that can then ultimately feed back into AI and make better ad units too.
It's all about getting the right ad to the right person at the right time.
Yeah, there's so much that can happen, and it all comes back down to this data that you have.
Right.
How do you balance the agility of that with your ability to lead, be the grown-up in the room? How do you offset those two things? You're making decisions as a CEO, and you have to be agile in your space.
You have to listen. Right? I think the main thing is at the end of the day, we're all people. And I'm a CEO, but I've worked in functions that have sat beside every single one of my clients, whether that's a product person or a salesperson or a BD person. And I think my early experiences in working across the go-to-market organization has given me perspective where I have a level of comfort, whether I'm working with you, Geoff, as a sales leader, or if I'm working with a BD person, a finance person, a lawyer. I can help them to understand where we're coming from and approach it in a non-threatening way. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. I want to make sure there's transparency and clarity in everything that we do. And I want our customers to be comfortable with that. So being able to help them to create that level of trust. And then I think from the trust comes authority. And with that authority, there's a level of innovation that can come from that. And so you can be agile. Again, once that trust is there, there's a lot of movement and room to help co-create.
I love that. And I think just speaking to that point of innovation, I think also speaks to the leadership that you're driving. What's a leadership decision you've made recently that might surprise people outside your company?
We've turned away customers.
Oh, that is surprising.
Can you say more?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in the midst of of contracting with a potential customer. And some of their requests and red lines that came through were indicative of practices that didn't align with our values per se. We had a conversation internally and we decided that this is just the beginning. And that indicator would be reflective of worse things to come down the line. And as a bootstrapped founder, every decision you make is critical. The best thing that happened was my co-founder and I were 100% aligned. Neither of us argued or debated. We both brought the fact to the table that we were both uncomfortable with the way that they were approaching our partnership. And we essentially told them, this is what we require to be a partner of ours. And if you're not willing to do that, that's okay. We'll continue to cheer for you. We'll continue to root you on, but it's probably not the right time for us.
And they walked away as well?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask, if you answered that you were bootstrapped, but I was going to ask how it was received internally and by any other stakeholders.
I think one of the main things in being a founder is ensuring that the people you surround yourself on a daily basis are value aligned. And I think that is, in a marriage is the same thing. In a partnership, in a co-founder partnership is just as important, because you spend every hour of the day and you need to start to be able to predict how you're going to make decisions for each other, with each other, and know that this person's always going to trust you and you're going to trust them.
Right. And that must cascade down to your teams as well, who must really like that.
We're a pretty small team, so yeah.
Well, just the idea that you're actually embodying the values that you're saying.
Yes.
That, again, like, not to continue to talk about the rarity of these things, but there are plenty of companies that say one thing and do another that are much, much larger and could pass on the revenue meaningfully and not get impacted. Like, this is not, you're not an enormous company, right? This was like something that was probably meaningful revenue to you that you step back from.
Yeah. And I think the thing that comes up, and that's actually one of the most important things, is values. Because when you have nothing else, you have your values. And it's one thing to step into a large company where someone tells you, like, we're customer obsessed. It's a different thing to sit down and reflect and say, what do I care about? And I'm building the culture and the foundations of this company. What do I want it to stand for? And when someone hears the word Advertible, what do they think of? Obviously, we're small. They're going to think of us as the founding team, and they're going to understand that we're a reflection of our product. And we are ambassadors of our companies.
I will continue to say it. Like, there are a lot of people in this industry, and I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of people in this industry who would say, your values in $3 will get you a subway ride. At a certain point, like, you either are embodying the values that you say you are, or you're not. So that actually leads, I think, to a pretty interesting question here. And you kind of sort of answered this, but have there been times where your position and your values have complicated, outside of what you just said, sort of complicated the decision-making process?
The place where it might get questioned, or where we might have had some complexity, is if a customer had said, okay, great, we need you to go and do this for us now. And we'll have to stand there and say, does this align with what we're focused on? I mean, I talk to my co-founder every morning. The first thing I do is wish him good morning. He wishes me good morning. And like, we start our day by figuring out, okay, are there any fires we have to put out? And we align on any message that's going out to customers. But we make sure that anything we're doing is focused. And that's another thing that's incredibly important at this stage, is the ability to stay on track and continue to do the one thing that you say you're going to do and deliver every time. And so if a customer's coming to us and asking us to do it in a different way, a way that doesn't align with us, or something that's going to in any way harm other relationships that we have, we're going to say no. And we've had to do that, and we will continue to do that.
I think you're still coming back to the values are driving all the conversations, but sometimes you pause and go, what are we really talking about here? And just staying focused on your goals and your values.
And if we can bring it back to, okay, it actually relates to our core principle, our core product, one of the core functionalities that we've already built, let's explore how we can make this happen. But it's always bringing it back to the heart of what we've decided to do and making sure it's working that way.
While we're talking about values, you brought this up earlier, just the notion of being an immigrant, and you are an advocate for all kinds of diversity across the industry, right? Not just female-led, not just even DesiUS, right? But all of the things that you think about, right? How are we advocating for diversity in our industry? A more, let's say, colorful palette across our industry. As you think about the values that you bring and all of that aligns, talk a little bit about how coming from an immigrant perspective has informed how you drive the values of your organization, and a little bit, frankly, about DesiUS, because I know that's a big thing that's important to you. That's part of what you do.
So the values that we bring to our organization, my co-founder is also an immigrant. And I think in that we're both very aligned in the fact that, I think we were talking about this earlier, Greg, you have to have the conversations of what matters to you. And we both made sure we had those early on. And there's a conversation of like, do I need $100,000 a month to survive? Or do I need $5,000 a month to survive? And that's an honest, vulnerable conversation that has to happen. You're entering a partnership, a marriage with this person, and knowing that you're both willing to go the extra mile for whatever reason, because you know that that matters to that person, is what drives us every day. Because it's about that friendship and about that support. That is our support system, like that's who we have. And then recognizing that what I have now and what I'm doing has nothing to do with me. This is not about Priti. This is about having a platform that is representative in a way of a larger group of people that might not have had the courage to do this. And I simply am a vessel and a messenger saying, hey, if I can do this, any of you can. And I think with that, recognizing DesiUS is really a community for South Asians that is not about all of the engineering resources necessarily, or the engineers that are behind the scenes. It's about the folks that are on the front lines, that are of color, that have maybe hit a ceiling, or that are getting questioned, or that aren't rising up for one reason or another, and making sure that they have a support system and a network that they can rely on to ask questions of, or to look to each other for recommendations for jobs that they have that are available, or even just getting together and having a conversation with someone else who understands what you're going through at a very core level, because it is different. And I'm not saying that we're necessarily defined by these struggles, but we have a common heritage that gives us viewpoints that we can relate to. And I think that was really important in recognizing there are a lot of folks that don't have a support system. We want to make sure, even if it's just a network they can reach out to and send a message that's a joke that everyone understands. It's just knowing that there are others out there in the community like us.
What does that network and support system look like in practice? Like, you gave some really good examples of what you would ask of them, but like, how do people connect with it?
So we have a WhatsApp group. We are redefining our website right now. So we'll have a membership portal there. We have 8 leaders on the board. It started as more of a networking organization. Now we're trying to have more systematized conversations. We're having more regular get-togethers at all of the tentpole events. And then what we're planning to do is bring in content and bring in other folks that can help facilitate conversations, whether that is someone who can help teach about branding or help facilitate conversations around how to go up the career path or the career ladder, and having a job board, things like that, that are opening up the conversation for folks within the Desi community in ad tech.
Nice. Community in every form is so critical, but we'll have to make sure we get some information on that for the show notes too.
Yeah. And as a small company, the community that once was naturally part of the organizations we worked for and the teams that we built and having that camaraderie, when you get out of that space, I think the big thing you miss is the people. And so you end up creating the communities. And the cool thing about that is you hand select who you want to surround yourself with. And that, I think, is the beautiful part of all of this, is you recognizing what you're missing and then being able to take action to bring more of those people together. Because if you're missing them, someone else is too.
I absolutely love that response. I think where people tend to trip up around these things is that they think of them as you're only including these people. When the answer is, this is all about building community. Yeah. This is all about inclusion, full stop, not exclusion. And all of this only makes the palette richer. It only makes the industry better. And it is, in many respects, shocking to me that people tend to think that this is something that is not inclusive?
I think that there's a very transactional nature around the way that we've been raised in our careers, right? We've been told that you have to network in a certain way or that you have to connect in a certain way. And ultimately, that transactional nature is very transparent and it's no longer palatable. And I think recognizing that I don't want to be someone's network to be leveraged. I want to be your friend and your advocate and your microphone and your cheerleader. And that's going to come through us building natural relationships.
It's community versus network.
Yeah.
That's just the easiest way to think it through.
Yeah, really good call out. What's a piece of advice you give often?
So I know we've talked a lot about values. So I think the first thing is recognize and understand what your values are and stand by them, even in those difficult situations, because your reputation will precede you. The expectation of Priti will enter the room before I do. And I want to make sure that whatever that is that you know about me is only going to be the best version. And look, we've all grown up in a place where we haven't had role models or have had to navigate what it's like to become a leader. And we've all had missteps. I'm not saying that I haven't had missteps, but I think now recognizing that there's a way to be the best version of yourself and make sure that's what's preceding you. That's the advice I would give anyone that's coming up in the industry is like, always think about the fact that this person who you're dealing with today that you might not like, they might have a different place in your life in 2 years. So like, even if you don't like them, do treat them with respect and kindness because that'll always come back.
I'm surprised at how much people don't think about that. I have a lot of people who reach out to me around networking requests in sort of good ways, but they're looking to connect with folks as they look for jobs. And I had one not too long ago where somebody said, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. And when I reached out to them before making the introduction, the person said, oh, I remember that person. And they were gratuitously not nice to me. Yeah. And so, yes, I'll take the call, but probably I'm not going to be the first one who's going to be their advocate or their helper because they didn't help me when they could have taken the call.
Yeah.
It also makes me think about, there's a very old, but has really stood the test of time, Fast Company article about the brand called you and your personal brand. It speaks to that notion of values and reputation and how you show up in all the different places that in 1999 was largely in person, but now is your social presence, your online presence matters a lot, even if you keep a very low online profile.
Yeah.
When you think about leadership broadly, what do you think the biggest gaps are in leadership today?
I think we're at a really interesting dynamic turning point where you have a group of people entering the workforce that have a different expectation of leadership than perhaps you and I did when we were growing up. And they're not loyal. They expect purpose. They expect to know why they're doing what they're doing. And they expect balance. That is being contrasted by this pressure that's being put on large companies to make more money. And so boards are bringing in people who would have once solved that problem 15 years ago. And so I think there is this friction and this tension between the leadership that's coming in and the expectations of the workforce that's coming up. And so the leadership is missing the empathy, the compassion, this more like the soft, feminine skills that are necessary to balance the structure, the methodologies, like the hard structures around leadership. And so you need that balance of soft and hard in order to be a leader that is not only balanced in your perspective, but that is going to motivate and actually inspire the folks that need to work to get the work done.
You can definitely see that with people entering the workforce, right? Greg and I are roughly the same age. He's older. But we're sort of these late Gen Xers, right? Yeah. When I started working my first job, I didn't think at all about the purpose of the company. I didn't think at all about the notion of leadership. All I knew was I was getting paid to come in for X amount of hours, and sometimes I got overtime, which was really cool because it was slightly more money. And that was it as my first job. But I think respectfully, it is much, much better than I was when I was younger because people are entering the workforce with this notion of being purpose-driven. What is it that I'm doing? How am I contributing in many ways? And I have a lot of respect for that perspective in general.
But why isn't leadership actually trying to address it?
It's super problematic. Yeah, it's super problematic. Look, a lot of, I think the lousy leaders are going to be aging. They hold on with dear life, but they're aging out, right? And what you're getting is there's now a next generation of people that look a little bit more like us here speaking today that understand that and will begin to inculcate that into corporate life. I mean, there's tension here, right? And I don't want to get into global geopolitics, but like there's a lot of tension between that old guard and new guard right now. We're going through an upheaval. Things are changing. Not to tease my Substack here, but I have an article coming out about this, which is truly like this tension between modernism and postmodernism and how are we actually bridging that gap? And it's been 30, 40 years now that we've actually been doing that. But frankly, like a change is going to come, I guess, to quote Sam Cooke.
Yeah, as you both are talking, I've always thought that transparency is a big part of the answer there too. Like it's the very, maybe not the first step, but it's one of the really tangible things that you can do.
Yeah.
And it's something that I worked in communications and corporate communications in the early part of my career. And it was something that people didn't appreciate at the time. But we talked about it on the comms team. We're like, the best leaders are the ones who understand that you do need to communicate. And then it's not just about the press release that's going out, but it's talking about explaining to the employees what we're doing, where the priorities are, what the goals are, because even if it wasn't purpose-driven in the way that companies talk about today, it was still helping people understand where we're trying to get to and why, and where we've got obstacles, what are the things you can do about it. But to your point of why people are not doing it, I think they, in a lot of cases, haven't had the role models, don't know where to start. And then leadership can be lonely. There's a lot of pressures top down to achieve a lot of different things. So it's often the extra communication or the extra mile is sometimes the thing that gets dropped.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point of being a Gen X, I'm a Zennial. I would say I'm like right there. I didn't have any great female role models to look at. There were like women that were masked in toxic masculine behavior. Don't do this. Don't say that. Don't dress like this. Actually, the best way to lead is to be authentic to who you are. So I had no one to really learn that from until I was thrown in this spotlight. And all of a sudden, you realize for yourself, number one, how vulnerable it is, but how empowering it is for others. When you can truly just be you, you really open the doors for other people to feel that freedom to do it too.
Is that how you pronounce that? Zennial? I always pronounced it Xennial. Am I like, and nobody's corrected me? That's
I don't know. It's a Zennial to me.
You want to bring this ship in for a landing here? Try to ask the last question.
All right. So I'm going to make this a two-part question. In terms of what excites you the most about the future of your part of the industry, and what do you want your legacy to be?
All right. I am excited about the fact that there's still room to create change. That we're entering maturity in programmatic, but we're also entering a new phase of innovation. And I think because of that, the pivot point that we're at, there's a chance to bring together the old and the new in really cool and exciting ways. And I think I mentioned retail media and CTV earlier in terms of just native addressing those challenges. But I think in general, AI is going to have a change in the way that we can solve problems. And we're also in a really interesting place with that, where that technology is going to leapfrog 3 more times in the next year before we get to some place of stability too. So exciting to see where that lands, but cautiously optimistic that we're going to use it and we're going to frame it in a way that can be thoughtfully and responsibly used. And in terms of my legacy, I hope that I can leave behind this idea that she did it her way. And in doing that, allowing others to do it their way. So recognizing that you can fully, wholeheartedly, unapologetically be you and still be successful. There's no playbook. There's no right way to do it. There's just your way. And your way is unique to who you are. And if anyone else feels that inspiration to do it their way, I'm here to support them.
I love that.
Fantastic.
And I think you're going to inspire a lot of folks with that.
Awesome.
I agree. Thank you so much.
This
is fabulous.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Leadership In is hosted and produced by Geoff Wallenitz and Greg McDonald. This episode was recorded at Podstream Studios in New York City.
Special thanks to the amazing studio team and to DesiUS for production support. Please follow the show on your favorite podcast app. If you have questions or know someone who'd make a great guest, we'd love to hear from you at leadershipinpodcast@gmail.com.